My phone buzzed at 10:38 p.m. The screen lit up, and out of habit, I pushed my glasses up from the tip of my nose. It was a message from Ian, my son. Just 11 words. But they were enough to change everything. "Mom, it won't work. Sarah prefers it to just be her family." I froze. The wrapping paper I was holding stuck to my sweaty fingers, and the gold ribbon slid off my lap. The gift, a travel set with personalized luggage tags for the grandkids, rested there like a cruel joke. The kitchen was silent, except for the low hum of the fridge. Outside, rain gently tapped on the porch roof. The under-cabinet light cast long shadows across the counter, like time itself had come to a halt. What did that even mean? What was he trying to say with, "I already paid my part"? That wasn't just a message. It was a verdict. Cold. Final. I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been excluded. Not by accident, but by choice. I stood up slowly. Every joint felt heavier than it should. I walked to the cupboard, opened the high shelf, and took down the old glass jar with the rusty lid. The one I'd been quietly filling for 3 years with $5 bills, the occasional 10, even singles. Money I saved by skipping haircuts, passing on coffee dates, and not buying new blouses. Money earned from online classes I taught through aching eyes and back pain. But always with joy, because I believed in that dream. It was our dream. Mine, Ian's, the grandkids, even Sarah's. The trip was to honor Richard, my late husband, gone 6 years now. He used to say, "The sea heals what time can't." But now, it all felt like a bitter punchline. I was the woman who paid, but wouldn't be in the photos. The one who planned it all, but had no seat in the van. The one who dreamed, but wasn't invited to live the dream. I opened my laptop. Old, slow, but loyal. I clicked on the folder where I'd saved everything. Receipts, bookings, the driver's number, the chef I hired for the special beach dinner, all paid. Every cent came from my account. And then, without rushing, I opened my banking app. The balance was right there, nearly $18,000. Every reservation, every ticket, every charge tied to my name, and there it was, in small letters at the bottom of the screen. Lock cards. My finger hovered over the button. And for the first time that night, I smiled. Yes, it's true what they say. Some wounds don't need tears, they need closure. And sometimes, silence is the most powerful way to scream. If you've ever been forgotten, ignored, or left out by those who should have loved you, then this story is yours too. Subscribe to the channel. Here, the voices of women who were once silenced are finally heard. The cursor blinked on the screen as if waiting for my decision. The house was still silent, but inside me a storm had begun to stir. I was no longer just a hurt mother. I was a woman awakened. I closed the laptop, reached for the chamomile tea I'd left sitting on the edge of the sink. It was lukewarm, bitter, like the taste in my throat. I sat back down at the table, next to the little gifts that would never be given. Each one carefully labeled with my grandchildren's names. Milo, Emma, Josh, shell bracelets, tiny bottles of sunscreen, keychains that read, "I love you, Grandma." My fingers trembled, not from weakness, but from strength long withheld. It was the calm rage of someone who's been unseen for far too long. Ian had no idea, none of them did, that the bank could close too. I reopened the app, clicked on Settings, scrolled down to the Account Freeze option. A warning popped up. This action will block all transactions from linked cards. Do you wish to continue? I didn't confirm. Not yet. I needed to see it, to feel it. I walked over to the wall calendar, the one with the yellow daisies, a gift from a kind neighbor. I circled the flight date. Thursday, 9:10 a.m., Raleigh-Durham Airport. That meant check-in would be around 7. Perfect timing. I took a deep breath and added a sticky note in the corner of the date. When love no longer fits, respect shuts the door. The night dragged on. I didn't cry. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't scroll through social media in search of distraction or comfort. I just sat there at the kitchen table in the soft glow of the under-cabinet lights, because that moment deserved reverence. It wasn't ordinary pain. It was a farewell ritual. I thought of Richard. How would he have handled this? He always said I was the heart of the home, and now this heart was learning to beat on its own. I lit a small candle from his favorite band, the one we used to light when he came home tired from the hospital. Placed it on the table, beside a photo of us at Myrtle Beach, laughing, feet in the water. I ran my fingers over the glass frame. A little dust had gathered in the corner, like everything that's forgotten, like me. And then, maybe to seal that moment with a final gesture of grace, I sent one last message to Ian. If you need help with the bags or snacks for the kids, I have anti-nausea bracelets that might help Olivia. Just let me know. A few minutes later, I saw the read receipt. No reply. No thank you. No acknowledgement. That was it. I knew then it wasn't a mistake, it was a decision. And if they had made theirs, it was time I made mine. I returned to the app, held the phone with both hands, my fingers hovered, then slid down to the button. Activate freeze. I tapped. The system responded. All transactions have been suspended. And right there, in that absolute silence, I understood what true power felt like. The kind of power that doesn't scream, doesn't force its way in. It simply turns off the faucet everyone was drinking from, yet no one recognized the source. I exhaled, closed my eyes. Now, the bank was truly closed. The next afternoon, the phone started ringing. First Ian, then Sarah. Then Sarah's mother, the same woman who once said, "Some family members do more harm than good," conveniently forgetting that I was family too. Then came the messages, the voice notes, the emails. Some asked if there was a technical issue with the cards. Others assumed it was a banking error. But not a single one of them asked if I was okay. I simply slid the phone to silent mode and set it on the table. The same table where, earlier that morning, I had written with a blue pen at the top of a blank sheet of paper, "Restorative Trip." Beneath it, I listed names that came not just from memory, but from the heart. Joanne, my next-door neighbor, who raised 3 grandkids on her own and still brought me homemade cookies every Christmas, wrapped with care. Linda, from church group, who hadn't seen the ocean since 1987. Nina, who's been caring for her brother with Alzheimer's and sleeping on a couch for the past 6 years. Elaine, who plants flowers in her late husband's garden every Sunday. He's been gone nearly a decade. Rose, who was a grandmother, but never got to be called one. I wrote, and I breathed. For the first time in a long time, my heart didn't ache. It expanded. Maybe that dream was never meant for them. Maybe it had always been meant for us. I called Joanne first. She answered hesitantly, "Hey, is everything all right? Would you like to come to Charleston with me? 7 days, ocean view. No rules, just women who know what it's like to give too much and receive too little." There was a long pause, and then, "Are you serious?" Linda cried before I could even finish the invitation. Nina asked 3 times if it was a mistake. Elaine fell silent, then whispered, "I don't know if I even remember what the ocean breeze feels like." And Rose simply said, "Yes, because no one ever chooses me first." I redid everything, canceled the old reservation, found a smaller villa with wide windows that opened to the sea, rebooked the tickets, this time with my name as the primary passenger, not out of pride, but out of healing. I had new shirts made. This time they didn't say, "Family is forever." They said, "We chose each other. We see each other. We love each other." Every detail was prepared with the same care. But now, without fear of being left out, without the desperate need to please, I didn't have to beg for space anymore. I had built a home. The night before the trip, I went to the shelf where I keep special candles. I took down the one from Richard's favorite band, the one I lit for him whenever he needed strength. I placed it on top of my suitcase, right beside the same photo of us at the beach, almost 40 years ago. Feet in the sand, laughing loudly, him holding me by the waist like the world was light. I whispered, "This is for you, Rich." but maybe it was always for me. And then I slept. For the first time in years, I slept without waiting for apologies, without hoping for a call, without fearing the silence. I slept with the windows open, the wind dancing through the curtains, as if freedom had finally arrived. The taxi pulled up in front of the villa late that morning. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and just beyond, the ocean shimmered under the sun, as if it were welcoming us home. I sat in the front seat, both hands firmly gripping my worn leather purse, my heart pounding, not from fear this time, but from presence, from certainty. Gloria, Linda from my list, though she preferred her middle name, was the first to step out. She planted her feet in the white sand and stood still, as if trying to understand whether what she was seeing was even real. "It's bluer than I ever imagined," she whispered, voice trembling. Her eyes sparkled behind her sunglasses. "I've never seen the ocean before, you know?" Nina followed, backpack slung over her shoulder, clutching the pillow she brought from home. She walked over to Gloria and gently wrapped an arm around her. "We're here now. That's all that matters." We entered the house. It was simple, but full of warmth. White walls, large curtainless windows, a long wooden table in the center of the room, surrounded by mismatched chairs, each with its own story. I opened my suitcase and set a photo of Richard on the table, now in a new walnut frame. He was smiling, head tilted back slightly, the way he always did when telling his silly jokes. I placed the candle beside it. That flame would be our lighthouse each night. That first evening, we had dinner right there. Simple: grilled fish, coconut rice, and mango juice. Carmen, the quiet one, softly said, "It's been years since I've sat at a table with other women." No one answered aloud. We just smiled, raised our glasses in a silent toast. On the second night, Gloria ran into the sea wearing a cotton floral dress. She laughed like a child. The waves lapped at her legs as she shouted between giggles, "If I'm going to die of something, let it be salty happiness." Nina ran in after her, clothes and all. Carmen stayed back, crying on the sand. When I asked her why, she whispered, "Because I thought I didn't know how to smile anymore." And that's when I understood. This wasn't just a trip. It was a return, not to the past, but to the woman each of them had left behind somewhere along the way. Every night before bed, we lit Richard's candle. Each woman would say a phrase she needed to hear. At 30, at 40, or even just last week. You don't have to disappear to be loved. You deserve to be cared for. You are not only what you do for others. You are still beautiful, even when no one says it. You don't have to apologize for existing. I listened to each one, and little by little, I began to heal too. The pain of not being chosen by my family began to loosen its grip, because here no one waited for permission to belong. We were there for one another. And that was love. Not the kind born of blood, but the kind you choose, the kind you build, the kind that welcomes you in and holds you close. On the morning of the third day, I woke to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. The aroma of fresh brewed coffee and banana bread rising in the oven filled the house like a warm embrace. Nina was dancing alone to a soft Caribbean tune playing on the radio. Carmen was slicing fruit. Gloria had tied my scarf around her waist like an apron and was humming a melody long forgotten from her youth. I leaned against the doorway and watched, unnoticed. And in that moment, something became clearer than ever. I hadn't run away from my family. I had found one. We all sat around the table. At the center, Richard smiled at us from his frame. I lit the candle, and as we had agreed, one of us would speak a word to herself. It was Carmen's turn. She stood, eyes glistening, cradling her mug in both hands. At 60, someone finally saw me, and that someone was me. No one spoke. We just held her hand in silence, the kind of silence that listens. That stays. That says, you belong here. That afternoon, we took a little trip to the historic village nearby. We strolled without hurry, arms linked, laughing at silly souvenir shop windows, tasting ice cream that melted too quickly in the heat, and snapping photos of each other, not for social media, but for memory, for real photo frames, the kind you proudly set on a shelf. At one point, Nina pulled me aside and asked, "Elena, why did you do this for us?" I took a deep breath, looked up at the sky where the clouds stretched thin like silk veils, because I know what it feels like to be erased, to give until there's almost nothing left. And now, if I'm going to love, let it be with awareness. If I'm going to give, let it be by choice. And you chose me back. She didn't say a word. She just hugged me, tightly, warmly, truthfully. Later that evening, we walked down to the beach. The sky was brushed in pink and gold, like a silent blessing. I carried my chair to the edge of the shore, dug my feet into the damp sand, and wrote with my finger, belonging, not to anyone, but to myself, to my own story. The next night, Rose, the quietest among us, surprised us all by raising her glass of lemonade and saying, "For years, no one remembered my birthday. This week, I was born again." The candle flickered in the center of the table, casting gentle shadows on the walls. Richard's photo seemed to smile with quiet pride, as if he were saying, "Now you understand, my girl." And I did. I understood that real love doesn't have to beg. It doesn't ask for space. The love that matters, it invites, it holds, it sees. And I was seen. By them, by myself, by God. We returned home on a Tuesday just after lunch. The South Carolina sun still kissed my arms with a soft warmth. The scent of the ocean had clung to my clothes, like a quiet reminder of everything I had lived. As soon as I stepped inside, I dropped my suitcase and walked straight to the kitchen. The vase of daisies I had left before the trip was still on the table. They were dry, but still beautiful, as if they had waited for me. I turned on the computer just to check a grocery receipt, but as soon as the screen lit up, there it was, a new email. Subject, "We just want to clarify." Sender, Ian. I read it slowly. Each line filled with justifications that sounded more like thinly veiled excuses. Things got out of hand. Sarah was under a lot of stress. We never meant to hurt you. The boys asked about you. And then, the real reason came at the end. If you're able to reimburse at least part of the trip deposit, we're in a tough spot right now. That was it. No apology, no accountability, just another attempt to turn love into a transaction. Another request disguised as affection. I closed the email. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it. I didn't mark it as important. I just left it there, like a stone in the road I no longer needed to step around. I walked to the cabinet, grabbed a tall glass, filled it with iced tea and fresh mint, sat down in the armchair by the porch window, where Richard had once hung a seashell wind chime. A gentle breeze stirred it, and it rang like a whisper from another time. I smiled, not from nostalgia. I smiled because I didn't feel anger, or sadness, or hurt. I felt peace. I stood slowly, went to the bedroom, opened the suitcase still sprinkled with sand in the corners, and took out the candle, the one I had saved to light at dinner with my former family, the one that never invited me. I placed it in the center of the table and lit the flame with a match. Beside it, Richard's photo. "You would have loved those women," I whispered. I sat down, thought of Carmen's laughter, of Gloria's awe as she stood before the sea, of Nina's quiet stillness as she touched the water for the first time, of Rose who said, "I didn't know I could still feel chosen." And in that moment, I understood. I had never been alone. I had simply been with the wrong people. True love doesn't ask you to disappear just to fit in. It doesn't apologize for existing. It doesn't pretend surprise when it hurts you. True love sits beside you, shares the beach towel, rubs sunscreen on your back, and holds your hand even when you say you're fine, just to make sure you don't have to be strong alone. That night, I opened the wooden box I keep under my bed, the one that holds the things time didn't take. Inside were the little letters Ian wrote to me when he was 8, filled with clumsy hearts and superhero doodles, Richard's linen handkerchief, still faintly scented with his old cologne, and my hardcover journal, the one I used to write in when life felt too big to fit into loose words. I opened to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote, "The Forgotten Women," and one by one I began to fill it with names and small details no one else seemed to remember. Beatrice, who's cleaned houses for 40 years but has never had guests in her own. Esther, who's never had a birthday cake with lit candles. Margaret, who says the hardest part of aging isn't the body, but the feeling of becoming invisible. Dolores, who waited for a letter that never came. Shirley, who was a mother, a grandmother, a cook, a caregiver, but never seen simply as a woman. Each name was a prayer. Each story, a whisper. I wrote like someone stitching, thread by thread, a quilt of shared memory. And I realized, maybe my legacy wouldn't be financial inheritances or grand Christmas dinners. Maybe this was my legacy. To give home to those who were never invited. To give voice to those who were always silenced. To give love with no expectation of return. The next evening, we gathered once more around the table. The candle flickered, swaying gently, as if dancing with us. It was our last night together. Gloria shared that, when she was young, she dreamed of opening a bookstore. Carmen revealed she never married because her mother always said she was too difficult. Nina admitted that only now, at 63, did she finally feel like she belonged somewhere. And Rose, her voice raspy and sure, said, "I spent a lifetime waiting for someone to really see me. Tonight, I saw myself in your eyes." We fell silent after that, a silence full of meaning, of presence, of quiet tears and long smiles. There, no one asked permission to exist. No one had to fight for space. We all belonged. At the end of the night, we wrote little notes to one another and tucked them inside seashells we had gathered throughout the week. You made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. Thank you for listening without judging. You restored my faith in people. Your story helped heal mine. Each woman took home a shell with a message she didn't want to forget. I took mine too, with a note from Gloria that read, "Thank you for building a new table and giving me a seat at it." On our final morning before heading home, I walked to the edge of the sea alone. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the sky was painted in soft lilacs and gold. The sand was cool beneath my feet, and the sound of the waves was gentle, like an old song the heart somehow still remembered. I brought with me the last candle, the 7th. The other 6 had been lit on the previous nights, one for each woman, one for each truth spoken, one for each quiet healing. But this one was mine. I pressed it into the sand, lit it slowly, shielding the flame with my hands. The wind whispered around me, but it didn't blow it out. It was as if the universe itself said, "This light is yours, and it will keep burning." And then I spoke, not to them, not to Richard, but to the version of myself I had waited on for far too long. You don't have to explain yourself anymore. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to pay just to be seen. You are whole. You are worthy. You are love. And it's okay to begin again. The sea stretched out before me, endless, deep, free. And for the first time in decades, I felt all of that too. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't wish to go back. Because I had finally understood, with the kind of clarity that only comes after silent grief. They hadn't left me out. I had simply stopped knocking on doors that were never meant to open. When I got back home, I found one last note in the mailbox. It was from Ian. Rushed handwriting. Just 3 lines. "The boys have been asking about you. Let's talk when you're ready." I didn't open it. Not because it hurt, but because sometimes what people call reconciliation is just another attempt to return to the old patterns. And I was already past that. I went to the shelf, picked up the seashell Gloria gave me, opened it, and read the note again. "Thank you for giving me a place." I smiled. That evening I sat on the porch with my chamomile tea. The wind chime whispered its soft blessing. The dried daisies were still in their jar, and I didn't replace them. They reminded me that even what fades can still be beautiful, can still mean something. And now, if you've made it this far, if you've listened to every word like it echoed something inside your own heart, then know this. This story is yours too. If you've ever felt forgotten, if you've given until you disappeared, if you've waited for recognition and got silence in return, then, my dear, you too have the right to rise, to build your table, to light your candle, and to never again ask for permission to exist. If this story touched you, like the video, share it with other women who need to remember their worth, and please, subscribe to the channel. This small gesture helps us keep telling stories that heal. Because when a woman speaks from the heart, the world needs to listen.